Welcome to ND and Me, a podcast to share NDers' lived experiences. I'm Richard, an ND coach, mentor, accountability buddy, and business consultant. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning, Richard.
Tell us who Kim is.
Who am I? Good question. I think, when you learn you have ADHD, you start figuring out who are you. Yeah, you don't even know who you are anymore. All the things that I thought of me are ADHD. But yeah, my name's Kim Allingham, and I run a company now called Not Making Do. And yeah, purely to help ADHD folk like ourselves who are self-employed. So yeah, just really saw a bit of a gap there. But yeah, my background is in executive search and recruitment for 15 years for my sins. So that was my background. And now, yeah, it's evolved into people strategy and experiences and helping neurodivergent solopreneurs just get more opportunities.
Cool. So talk to me about your diagnosis journey.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I think I sort of, a bit like everyone else really, where you sort of think you might have ADHD and then get down that sort of rabbit hole. So it started out that I was working with a client last year and I was told that they might have ADHD. And because I look at strengthening the relationships within employees, I was like, right, okay, there's a bit of a problem here internally. How can I actually sort of strengthen this company if potentially someone's got ADHD? And when I went down the rabbit hole of looking into ADHD, I kind of came across women with ADHD. I found a podcast, I think Smart Ass Women, ADHD Smart Ass Women, talking about ADHD entrepreneur women. And oh God, it was just like reading myself. Everything I was just like seeing, I was like, this is like me. So yeah, I went down that rabbit hole and it just kind of explained everything about my life. Like I've been an entrepreneur for like since 2009, all the things that I've done. Went on the waiting list with the NHS and I actually got officially diagnosed in I think January the 14th this year. So it's all very new. But yeah, it's a bit of a journey.
And so not necessarily a long wait for the NHS diagnosis.
You know what? I think I was really lucky because when I rang up, I think it was just at that tipping point where it was getting really busy.
Yeah.
So when I spoke to, I think it was one of the, I think Psychiatry UK, etc. They were like, yeah, it's about 3 months. So I was like, okay, not too bad. But by the time I put my application in and filled it out, because obviously we don't do things quickly, it worked out about 6 months. But now when you hear the stories of like 2 to 3 years, yeah.
No, it's a little bit mad. So I Catherine, one of my former guests, was my former boss. And she was the reason I got my diagnosis because the company paid for my private diagnosis. It took her 18 months post-diagnosis to go through the NHS process.
See, I just think
even with the diagnosis, it still took a year and a half.
And I've actually had a message on Instagram the other day, actually a couple of days ago, saying that they went to the doctors, and I think the doctors actually said, look, it's like a 2-year waiting list. So actually got saying to people, kind of don't bother. But when you go private, it's like some places like £1,600 to get, diagnosed.
Yeah, I think it was 15 plus that, but yeah, it's not cheap.
I think if you get diagnosed now, I kind of see it as like a real privilege because to think you have ADHD is like one hurdle, but then also when you've got so many hurdles just to even get that diagnosis, I kind of felt like I was in limbo. I don't know how you felt, where I kind of find, I think, I don't even remember when I started thinking about it. I think it was like September, October last year. But I still felt like I was in limbo for like 6 months because you start thinking, like, am I just maybe I'm just trying to create a condition for myself. You start having that imposter syndrome or self-doubt. So I think when you're in limbo for 2 years, not knowing if you're actually ADHD or not, I think that's really tough. So yeah, I really feel for people who have to now wait a long time.
Yeah.
Because you start like, I know you don't really need like a label, as people say. And I was, already doing all the things I was doing without having the label. But in the back of your mind, you start questioning things, because it could be so many different other things. It could be trauma, like trauma is so linked with ADHD. And I know we suffer a lot with trauma with ADHD. So you start thinking, well, which one is it? What am I suffering from?
Right, it's that chicken and egg catch-22 of things feeding each other. Was there something first, or was it an innate thing?
Well, yeah, you start thinking like, what was the original problem? Is the trauma because of like failed businesses? Is it like from? But yeah, you have to go back when you actually start speaking to someone. Also, you have to. They go back like from the moment you're born. So when you come out of that, you can have that confidence that you do have it, and you're not just making it up.
Well, and that was a topic in Catherine's session. Her interpretation of scattered minds, that ADHD is created from trauma rather than it being innate. Well, it depends on what you class as trauma, and how that then feeds itself. But yeah, there was definitely some sadness of receiving the label.
Yeah.
And I was talking to ADHD brain at work, about the negative stigma of labels, and how in the medical sense they are deficiencies or disorders or things that are wrong, rather than things that are different. So yeah, I remember getting off the phone with the psychiatrist from my assessment, and then just being profoundly sad at,
it does.
There's now something wrong with me.
So, I think that's the problem, isn't it? It just triggers like different emotions for different people because of what's out there and what people are talking about it. And
that's why I think so many people don't disclose, because they don't want to be associated with the label.
And I had that even like when I was speaking to certain friends. They were like, I don't really want that label. And I think it's a society, isn't it, of like putting you in a box, etc. But we've been given so many labels, I think, over the years of not having the ADHD label. Like, oh my god, I've been like messy, disorganized, scatty, late. I'm all these different like labels, which
Machiavellian, toxic, disruptive.
It's just like you've got so many different sort of labels like that, as you're saying, that negatively impact you and dent your confidence. So for me, it was like a massive relief, like you were saying, that when you've got that official diagnosis. When I first looked into it, I honestly have had this like cloud over me for years, and I honestly believe that as soon as I figured out or been told that I had ADHD, so many of the problems that have been holding me back with confidence or whatever things that are happening just instantly sort of just like melted away. And I didn't care that whatever label it was, it didn't matter what it was. It was like gave me some answers for questions. I've been like gone through this like 10-year exploration of all these different little ailments I've had, and like the constant googling, I think people thought I was like a hypochondriac because I was always saying I've got these like different things, and there was always like this something else. Like when I was with a coach for 4 years, one thing we worked on is like to get rid of the shame, the guilt, and the going through grief and all these different things. And she was just trying to shift this self-belief and this self-confidence. But as soon as I got diagnosed with ADHD, that kind of lifted. So I think labels are whatever you want to make it really.
Whatever power you want to give them.
No, definitely. And I think when you've just been diagnosed, you've already got that low self-belief and low confidence. So you need people who are going to say it's fine right at the beginning, and that it's, it is a disorder for many people, it is a disability for many, but also it's how you look at it. Like I wrote that ebook a little while ago, I don't know if you saw that, where it was all about trying to identify the sweet spot, where I really don't believe it's a superpower or a disorder, because we can have moments of brilliantness, can't we, where we can like literally hyper focus, get loads of done, and we could feel like, oh my god, how did we create that? Jesus, I don't know how I came up with that. And then other moments you can't even get out of bed. Like if you're not in that sweet spot of like getting the balance with ADHD, yeah, it can go either way really. And I think people kind of need to know it's not just as disability, because I think we've all got disabilities. Everybody's got something which is you know, can influence us.
Yeah.
So,
Or diff abilities.
different. Yeah, diffabilities. Yeah. And you know, I talk about that on my website. It's like, you know, it's creating diffabilities in the workplace. But I think, yeah, having no shame about things, like that was the biggest, I think, thing for me. It's like, it's not excuses, is it? Like everyone talks
But
about.
it's rationalizing it in a, well, with a rationalizing it in a way that is better received.
Yeah.
So some of my work is in culture change stuff, so behavioral change in teams. And the organizational aspect of that is to develop fair, just learning, restorative cultures where there is no blame.
Yeah.
But we've had hundreds of years of blaming people for stuff. So
It's easy, isn't it? It's easy.
Absolutely.
Not being accountable and
Not my
blaming
fault.
someone else. Perfect.
So changing the language of blame to accountability.
Yeah.
Okay, but then how do you hold people accountable? Sydney Decker behind Just Culture talks about accountability being forward facing, so a little bit like coaching versus therapy, and blame being, you know, retroactive. So, you know, you hold people accountable for making sure it doesn't happen again, rather than or fixing it, rather than holding them to account for what happened. And there's also other language in there about when things don't go to plan. So it's not that it was right or wrong, because some things aren't wrong. They just happened.
It's a learning process. Everything we do, I think, is an experiment, isn't it? And I think seeing everything is about an experiment, and that, yeah, as you say, no one's to blame. But what is wrong is when people don't have like an awareness of what's going on, and they don't accept their role in you know, what they did. So in companies, let's say, where there's always someone to blame, like you mentioned, then there's always someone, I think, when someone's done something wrong, I think, well, we need to identify what triggered that as well. So for ADHD employees, let's say, we might snap quite quickly. We might press that F button quite quickly. You know, we might, you know, respond in a way which is probably not seen as being the best response. But, you know, in businesses, I think we fail to look at what triggered them. So was it because like management have said or done or not given the right resources or supported? And I think when, yeah, when there's no accountability from everybody, then that's where it all goes wrong. But yeah, we all have to be accountable for the part we play. And are we going to learn from it? Are we going to adapt? What are we going to do about it? So I think, yeah, your role that you're saying in businesses is so important. This last time I was on one of these, like my emails were popping up, pinging. I was like, oh yeah.
Just turn everything off, turn the phone over, make sure it's on silent. You know, try and focus by, you know, taking the batteries out of your clock so it doesn't tick.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's a good thing. I don't know why we still have a clock though when it's like that. Why do we do it? Is it because it's like,
well, because we're too lazy to take it off the wall?
That is probably more it. You know, actually, as well, when I started obviously clearing off everything on the back here, it was the calendar that I found on the wall. And it said 2017 on September, whatever it is. I was like literally 5 years or 4 years.
That you just decided from September 2017 that you never needed a calendar again.
Yeah, and I think it was like an inspirational like quote on it. I was like, oh, that's good. And then and I went around the house a few months ago when I was thinking, look, I need to see evidence of ADHD around the house. And there was like a tag and a lamp, which I bought when I moved in like 7 years ago. There was a picture frame downstairs with the picture which comes with the picture frame, and not anything to do with me. There was like
so you just took the frame out and just put it on the shelf.
It was literally one of those black and white frame, those pictures, which actually look quite good, and it also just stayed. But yeah, loads of there's little evidence, isn't there, around our houses where we're like, that is very ADHD, like keeping labels. There was like, keeping calendars, and it's like one of those turns of like you know, those blocks where you have like January, it was literally as it was bought, never turned. So so I think the key thing is don't buy calendars, don't have clocks, don't have anything which you can't change.
So I grew up with my grandparents, and my first room on my own with my grandparents was my great uncle's old room that they didn't really tidy. Yeah, he passed and I moved into his room. So there was a period for probably 5 or 7 years where I fell asleep to the noise of ticking clocks, and I
So you actually
woke
find
up.
it comforting. So it's like I don't know, the noise.
I think it's been so drilled into me that I now despise the sound of ticking clocks.
Oh right, so it's gone against
you. So he'd have like 3 pocket watches, like 2 big like proper alarm clocks, and a wall clock.
Oh my God,
so
that's actually making me anxious thinking about it.
And then I bought myself a couple of watches this summer, and I took one off it at bedtime and put it on the shelf above my head. Turn the light off, started dozing off, and the wife's like, "Can you go and put your watch downstairs?" I'm like, "Why?" Because just the watch hand. She's like, "I can't stand that." I was like,
it's these little things, isn't it? And I think all of us, I think my house is riddled with ADHD, so yeah, all of us have had a problem with things like that, like ticking and like little things that would just annoy me.
Although it's now Halloween, because this will go up in October and you'll see that it's Halloween. We've got a solar panel, solar powered dancing skeleton on our lounge window, and he's like tick tock tick tock.
Oh my God, that would annoy me.
And I'm like, wife, you don't like the sound of a clock, but you'll put up with that. Went, yeah, because he's cute.
It's like flashing lights at Christmas. Who has flashing lights on their Christmas tree? You're gonna tell me you do, don't you?
I don't mind that.
Yeah.
But I'm more frustrated by smell. So at the moment we've got like a candy floss, like Glade plug-in, and every now and again I can smell like sweet cherry, and I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, I think we are quite sensitive, aren't we, to like different sounds. And actually, you saying about that, when I had my office in London, we had they had this like what those the e-cigarettes, vaping. They had like a store open up downstairs, and they were making all the stuff downstairs as well. So the smell from they were making, and I literally I was getting angry. I had to stop. I couldn't do anything. So we ended up getting rid of the office about 6 months later. But yeah, the smell of that fruity smell.
But it's like any town centre in the UK, you know exactly where Lush is.
Oh God,
because you get a migraine 2 minutes before you see the shop because of the smell of the soap.
The smells, yeah, really bad. And I remember my mum when we were growing up, smells, perfumes. I remember a couple of friends went on holiday, and I remember went to duty free and we sprayed some like sunflower perfume. She literally said, "You are not getting on that plane until you wash that off." It's like, yeah, she was really sensitive to the smells as well, but it goes through us, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. So talk to me about not making do. Is that a relatively new thing post-diagnosis, or is that an adaptation of the work that you were already doing?
Started like with not making do concept, and it hadn't really been born. It's like when I was in between businesses, because of the pandemic, I was offering loads of support when people were looking for work. It really came about to me. Obviously, we have to make do, don't we? When we have no money or don't have a job, we have to make do, and sometimes just get anything. But it really came about that like loads of companies were just making do. They were just like making do with their current situation. They were just making any old hires, or so yeah, it became a real big thing. Like when I was sort of giving advice to people pro bono for like looking for work, was like, you don't want to make do. Making do, I believe, is when you coast along, you get convinced to go to another job, you end up taking a job where you can stay there for 5 years. You're making do. So it formed from that, I guess, where making do, you can make choices like to make money, but you have to have a plan. So you can take a job for you need money, but it's having a plan to not be it for a long time. So yeah, it was in that formation period. And then when I discovered about my ADHD, it really just became a little bit more niche, where it really made sense that actually for us, especially if we're looking for work, it's like we often make do as well with clients. So a lot of people who are ADHD end up doing their own thing because they can't work for someone else, they don't fit in, they flip between jobs, they get bored, frustrated. But when you end up working for yourself, you still have those same problems. You still end up having companies that potentially you're making do with, because you need a client, you need a job, you need to get going. So yeah, it really strengthened the whole fact that we personally, as self-employed solopreneurs, ADHDers, we need to really focus on how we can not make do, because when we're not focusing on that, when we focus on doing the right work, working with the right clients, working on the right projects, knowing our value, knowing what we do, we're not making do. The more we can get clear on that and find that sweet spot, the less we make do. And also we work for companies, they're not making do, because for anybody who goes into a job because they just need a job, companies aren't benefiting, because they know that they're going to go in there, they're going to be bored, frustrated, they're going to be bitching about people when it doesn't work out, and it's a short-term win. So not making do is more about the sustainability, it's about the long-term happiness, it's about always striving to how we can get within that sweet spot and not make do. And that's always looking at I guess it's always looking within and looking at our value, our positioning, our marketing, our projects and clients, etc. So yeah, that's kind of how the concept sort of happened, really. It doesn't sound like a quick way, like a quick idea, but it was just like, I really believe that we all need to focus on that, about not making do and not settling, and always working at how can we just get better, be happier, do what we love. Because so many of the ADHD sprinters that I work with are in this frustrated hole where they know what value they've got so amazing strengths, they can do so much in such a little amount of time, but they're making do because they need money, because they're stressed, they need work, so you end up just doing anything just because you need to just get out there. And the more we are in that sort of zone of like literally doing anything and everything, we don't actually get to do what we're great at. And I think our ADHD just goes way up and gets a bit erratic. So that's the background.
Erratic.
Well, I just think for me,
I don't disagree.
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing I identified with like sprinters, was that when we feel like we have our ADHD in control and we're feeling more in that sweet spot, we've generally we've got money, we're working on projects we're really happy about, we're working with clients who value us and value, and we connect with, we are looking after our health, we're sleeping well, but when you're making do with any work, I just do think our ADHD rises, because we're stressed, we feel shame, we can't be who we want to be, we're not authentic, and that obviously increases more stress, which obviously the cortisol levels rises, emotional dysregulation goes up. So when I say erratic, that sounds a bit yeah. So we are a little bit, aren't we, to be honest?
Yeah, my conversation with Helen about mindfulness meditation and having a better sense of self, and how that works in the ADHD stuff, absolutely chimes to that conversation. To say, I quite like being reactive, because that gives me all the chemicals my brain wants. But I can also see how, stress comes out of you in cold sores and spots, and
it's having that balance,
sore teeth, and
it's like you need the variety, don't you, and the change, the excitement and everything. but also you need the balance so it's not causing so much. Just like you said, like with spots and stuff, I've been really burnt out this last 2 or 3 weeks because I've not been in that zone. I've been doing too much new stuff, too much stuff which is pushing me and challenging me, which is good because I think that I wouldn't have done the stuff that I've done. But when it comes at a cost of where you're so burnt out, you're stressed, yeah, you know, my hair started falling out again, and I was like, you know, these things are like where I'm not looking after myself. So yeah, so I think that's the balance of like us keeping it in control. But I think we're always going to be pushing ourselves a little bit. We're never going to go for boring, stick in one job and do the same thing forever and a day. So I think it's like you're saying, if you're getting spots and like stuff, it's like recognizing it and just going, okay, I need to maybe eat better, I need to maybe sleep more, and having that balance, isn't it, a little bit?
Yeah, I haven't been slightly re-addicted to this orange goodness.
What is that?
It's Iron Brew.
Iron Brew, all right.
I spent a week in Scotland.
My laptop's on the dying, so I can't really read everything, so sorry.
Yeah, it's like Coke but healthier.
Yeah.
Allegedly, it's less calorific by nearly half. You know, like it's 48 calories.
I love the fact that that's how you're convincing yourself. It's like, well, you know,
it tastes good. It's got less caffeine and it's got less sugar than Coke. So yeah, and this light doesn't show off how orange my beard is.
I think it's actually coming out in your beard.
No, well, my maternal grandmother was Scottish, so I see myself as a little bit Scot. We had haggis for dinner last night.
Oh my gosh.
That's how.
I can't comment. Yeah.
Just anyway, and for all those Scotsmen listening, it was Grant's out of a tin because I know how to do it properly.
I wouldn't even know where to start. I don't even want to know what's in it.
Well, it's just like sausage. That's or black pudding, but without the blood. So yeah, it's just mince.
Yeah.
It's minced stuff, and you serve it with some black pepper and some mash of potatoes and swede. And last night we also had it with sweet potato, parsnips, broccoli.
So that's like a good mix of like loads of different foods, vegetables, and everything.
I don't eat that unhealthily. I just pump myself full of sugar.
I just think like we've all got something that everything's like, you know, in moderation, isn't it? So we've all got things which we do or eat or drink which we shouldn't drink probably as much. They're not great for us, but I think, yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be as pure and perfect and have like just water.
Well, yeah, it's really funny that one of my old colleagues was celiac, so everything that she ate was like on the line, but then she'd have like 3 cans of Coke Zero a day, and I'm like, so you're making up for the fact that you can't have all that starch.
I think though, like, yeah, I think like with Coke, I think I just found that when I stopped, I told you I stopped drinking 3 years ago. But then I just lent on to Coke, cans of Coke. So I was having cans of Coke twice a day. But I was getting really irritable. I had headaches,
Caffeine does
anxiety. I saw it manifesting in all these different ways. So then I had to wean myself off Coke. I was like, this is ridiculous. So I think anything that we have lots of, we have to question, is there something addictive about it, or is it good for us? Because there's something in it, isn't there, that's making us want to do it.
Well, sugar is 12 times more addictive than cocaine.
I can imagine, yeah.
And some people argue it's more deadly because of the obesity problem and all of that other jazz.
And people this is where the whole like debate comes into, like ADHD and meds, etc. When people don't like the fact, oh yeah, but they, you know, they rewire your brain, or they change the brain chemicals. Well, so does like sugar, as you're saying. So does like.
Well, so I'm not privileged enough to be far enough through the process to have the conversation about medication. But you know, Catherine, who we speak one of the previous episodes, got her prescription literally days before the podcast. And on the podcast, she's like, I don't want to take them. I don't know what will happen when I take them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I joined Leanne Maskell's talk to an ADHD coach session with the ADHD Foundation. And that was enlightening about how useful meds are to her.
Yeah.
And then a couple of the other people on the call were talking about building the routine to remember to do it, because we're really good at not remembering to do stuff.
So how they say they're addictive, but people forget to take them. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, but this stuff, it's basically a class A drug. So, yeah, but I didn't do it. Okay, well, yeah, there's a massive conversation there about the benefits of.
There's so many, I was on trialing loads of different meds. It can cause so many different problems, and I suffered a lot for a good 3-4 months until you found something. But they don't always work for everybody, and I think it depends where you are, what your background is. It's just not like a magic pill. You have to, as you were sort of mentioning, you have to have everything else, your lifestyle, everything else has to work to make the benefit of the meds. But when I wasn't diagnosed or had meds, then I drank loads. I spent loads of money. I ate loads. I binged. There's loads more damaging things that I did for me. I was drinking 2 or 3 cups of coffee a day. I was drinking bottles of red wine at the weekend to numb out feelings and emotions. I was taking antidepressants for my PMDD. I was taking sleeping tablets, cans of Coke, all this stuff. But I don't do any of that now because I've on meds. So you just think...
Or you don't do any of that now because you've weaned off caffeine.
Well, I guess this is caffeine, isn't it? I found as soon as I took meds, I just didn't take coffee anymore. I didn't have any withdrawal. It was a habit. Like booze, it was a habit, drinking booze. And I think a lot of that came from, I think as soon as I took meds, it just seemed to click a lot more. So I think, and that's not right for everybody, but I just think, yes, I might be taking something a lot of people don't agree with, and they think, but that's damaging. But how many people in the world are on anxiety tablets, on antidepressants, who are drinking? There's loads of things we could be doing which aren't great for us. Yeah. So you just find your poison, isn't it? Find your whatever works for you.
Well, and studies have said that the pharmacological interventions for ADHD are some of the most effective medications given to any disorder. And there's still people going, oh, well, we shouldn't medicate. Or, when I first went and spoke to my GP following my assessment, they're like, well, you're just doing this for the drugs.
You just literally have gone through the whole assessment just to get it.
So you think that I badgered my company to spend the best part of 2,000 quid to get me a diagnosis so you could give me drugs?
It's just crazy, isn't it?
Is that why you're now going to make me wait 2 years? So, I can't go and sell Adderall or Concerta to kids. Okay,
it's
thanks.
Crazy. But, and I feel like now that I don't really notice a massive difference but when I come off them, I notice that I've disorganized, my room's a mess, don't do the washing up. There's all these things that, you can tell that they help give you structure, but you definitely don't feel like, oh, I'm going to double up on them. I don't know anybody who actually sees it that way, like you said, where you need it kind of thing. And if anything, I feel like if you go, I have a higher dose for the week before my period, because I've had PMDD, and I take a slightly higher dose for that week. But I can tell once my period comes, if I've got the higher, I can tell when it's too high. So I don't think I can actually take too much of it. So I can't see how people get addicted to it, but then if I didn't take it, I'd just probably go back to 2 or 3 cups of coffee a day.
Yeah. It's so true that you don't know what you're missing until it's gone.
Yeah.
And just when I first got diagnosed and started really researching into stuff, my brain of all the references is waning. I need to be better at remembering where I saw stuff.
Oh, so do I.
But the analogy of that superhero like thought process of, you're in a racing car and now you know that you're able to go faster or brake quicker.
Yeah, I think the brakes is actually a good one, isn't it? It's like, I know actually how to actually, should I be doing this?
Yeah.
Should I maybe sit on it for 24 hours?
But I've got a very impulsive wife. She's not diagnosed. She has a level of OCD as well. So the washing up gets done every night, half an hour after eating dinner, because she makes me do it. Because she can't stand there being mess in the kitchen. Okay, cool. But yeah.
Do you think a lot of people, I think there's quite a few people, aren't there, with OCD, and they say sometimes from patterns from not overcompensating, isn't it, for your ADHD, of maybe not doing stuff in the past, or it's just like or it's just another condition, isn't it? Because I know my dad's got ADHD and OCD, which is brilliant because when he's here, he tidies.
Well, the likelihood of co-occurring conditions is high. I think that there's a sense of hypocriticalness in that mix. So, somebody who wants to be very, very pernickety about one thing, but they're not very good at it for themselves. Well, so I was speaking to
about your wife.
Well, we were getting there. I was talking to a group of mediators, and one of the questions in the conversation was, "What got you into mediation?" And the resounding majority said, "I like to help other people sort their crap out because I can't sort out my own."
Oh my God, yeah, that's so true.
So the reason why my wife's plate ends up in the sink to get washed up is because I put it in there. Because if I didn't, her desk would be strewn with 6 bowls until she then realised that there was no more bowls to eat out of.
You ended up start using a cup. I've done that. Yeah.
Well, that's why I refill water bottles, because and then I look on my desk and I've got an Iron Brew bottle and another water bottle and some more stuff. I should really put a bin in here so I can put all of the rubbish in a bin. And then what would happen is that I'd forget to empty the bin.
What I do when I'm in, like, sometimes I buy paper plates and paper bowls. And then if I'm in that zone where I'm just like, maybe if I'm really busy on projects, I know I'm just really bad at like cleaning everything, just like. So I started in the summer where I bought paper plates and it was brilliant. Just literally, I felt like I could just throw things away. The pressure builds up. Yeah, we've got cups and things. That's the worst, isn't it? When they're just all sprawled. So I think having bottles, like you're saying, it just helps.
Well, so the worst thing with my kids is that they will have a drink of water and then leave the cup by the sink. And then the next time they want to come get a drink of water, they'll get a new cup.
Yeah.
So I've got 4 kids. There's 6 of us in the house.
A lot of cups.
One evening, I did the washing up and there was 15 cups. I was like, there's only 6 of us in the house. How? And I don't use cups.
I think that's the hardest, isn't it, with families? Because obviously, many people in the family, probably have the same sort of conditions. And I think this is where, it's so much harder, isn't it? Because not only you've got to try and manage your own disorganization, but it's everybody. And then we're very good with our own mess. But when it's someone else's mess, like, I can live in my mess and I don't care. But if I walk into someone else's house and they're like, it's, So when you've got everybody and all their messes, very hard.
So we were told off for shouting this morning. I can't find my gloves. Okay, well, where did you find your hat? On the printer. Where did you find your scarf? On the sofa next door to the printer. Okay, well, have you checked behind the printer, behind the sofa, under the sofa? Because if your hat and scarf were there, then your gloves are likely to be close. And then Mum's like, they're in her coat pocket. I was like, why are they in her coat pocket? Well, I saw them, so I put them in her coat pocket. And I was like,
so the ones that are sensible and organised.
So I get that, but they're not where she was looking.
Yeah, this is why we need things on, on view, don't we? We need to have things because if we we forget them. And I think this is where we have to set up like structures and patterns. So for me, I've been very much like minimalizing everything. So I haven't got that much stuff really now, so I can keep some things on display and it's less overwhelming. But yeah, when people move stuff and put them in different, I'm like, well, how are we supposed to find them? Of course we're not going to look in the place they're supposed to be. Like,
well, look, a great saying that I always stand by: the thing you're looking for is always in the last place you look.
it's true. In the original place it should be.
No, because whoever finds something and then carries on looking.
That's true. Oh, it's a nightmare, isn't it? But
well, especially when you have a family that have things called the side, and there's a number of different places that are the side. So if I go to my dad's house, he's like, "Oh, it's on the side."
oh yeah.
No, on the sideboard in the kitchen, on the cabinet in the dining room,
Everyone's
or
got their little
on the
pocket.
mantelpiece, because they're 3 different sides.
So basically, we all need to have nothing, live in a real minimalist world.
Or be better at describing where stuff is.
Yeah, that thing, that thingamajig over there on that. Yeah.
Well, so my youngest isn't very good with words. She was a late speaker. She couldn't see to read until she was 4 or 5 because of the screening process and stuff. So she was in a bit of a tears getting ready for school. This happens quite regularly. This morning, and then Thursday or Friday last week, and then last Monday. Anyway, quite regularly. And so she's in a tears, flapping about, like on the verge of crying. And I'm like, "What's the matter?" And she's like, "I can't find something." I said, "Okay, well, what are you looking for?" "I don't know what it's called." "Okay, well,
it's like a game in itself, isn't it?
Can you tell me what it looks like and what it does? Then I'll know what you're looking for, and then I can help you." And she's like, "It's like a half circle thing you do with maths." And I was like, "That's a protractor. It's for measuring angles." And she's like, "Yes, that." And I was like, "Okay, well, we bought like a bag of 50 of them because the kids always lose them." So I was like, "Look, in the stationery cupboard, we've got a dresser in the lounge full of stationery. Pens, biros, highlighters, just everything is there." So I'm like, "In there is a bag. I can't find it." I open the top drawer and pull out a complete math set. It was like set squares, protractor, compass, pencil, everything completely solid. I was like, "Look, this is brand new. It was in the top drawer. You didn't even look." And then Mum comes storming down the stairs, opens up the back of her bag and pulls out a bright pink one, exactly the same as the one in the drawer, but pink, that was already in her bag.
It's the whole thing, is like sometimes we can be looking at something and just not see it. And because I think that when your emotions run high, that's when it all just gets a bit too much.
It was so funny this morning, her looking for her gloves. So she'd like stood in the lounge and just looked, and then walked out the lounge and went, "I can't find it." So, but you didn't actually look. You just like.
So this is quite frustrating when you're seeing someone else do it, but then we do it ourselves and we frustrate other people. So I know that, and this is why what's not known about these conditions is that those little things is like what is the downside of it, isn't it? Where it becomes really frustrating, but it just seems like someone's being really annoying and not caring and not spending enough attention, where actually that's a real big frustration to have that feeling where you just don't have the energy to look for something and you just go. But when you're the person seeing them, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I just created it."
So the habit that I've got into now is as soon as I can't find it, I vocalize it. Because then it's not only on me to find it.
And also, you're trying to tell the universe to just like throw it in your face.
It's like,
I want the universe to tell me where it is.
Yeah, "I'm looking for a blue pen. I can't see a blue pen. Yeah. Can somebody please help me find a blue pen? What, this blue pen or this blue pen or this blue pen?" Yeah. And yeah, it's last night. I've got a desk in the dining room where I work in the evening because being out here is cold. And I don't.
Are you outside? Is that little shed outside?
Well, so it's a brick outbuilding. So it's attached to the house, but you have to go outside to get back in the house. And there's a heater, and it's not cold out here, but at 8 o'clock at night, you probably want to be inside with your family and not out here.
Dark outside.
And I've got like 4 like kitchen cabinets next door to my desk full of stuff, and like a Bisley organizer and like little bits boxes and all kinds of crap. And last night I was looking for 4 little pots of magic powder. And I spent like 40 minutes just going through all of these cupboards, not being able to find it at all. And I just sat down, breathed, lifted a piece of paper, and it was hidden under a piece of paper on my desk. I'm like, I just spent the best part of an hour looking for what was in front of me.
And those, I don't know if you feel the same though, when you go through those moments of feeling, it's so frustrating, like that annoyance builds up, doesn't it? When you just get, why can't I just find something? And say when you find something, it annoys you then that you just found it really quickly and you should have found it.
No, I totally get that. And a lot of the work that I do is with customers' stuff. If I lose something that's a customer's, I'm in a tiz, because I'm like, help.
Well, it's like the fear, isn't it, of like the panic sort of kicks in.
It's like, if I've lost this or I've broken this, then da 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 da, and you're just in a death spiral.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the end of our time. Is there something that you wanted to talk about today that we haven't got round to?
We talked about a lot of things that happens with ADHD. I guess it's like when you touched upon like your wife even like talking about how when someone else has got another problem, and like say with the dishes and things, then you end up more likely to do it. I think that's a thing which is really important, like say for why the Project Sprinters came about really, and that's what we're going to be talking about even more so, where we're really good at solving other people's problems like really quickly. And I think a lot of that is projecting, because we don't want to deal with our own shit, like you were talking about, where if we've got problems ourselves, we don't really want to talk about it, so actually we'll solve someone else's problem really quickly. So I think it's just talking about maybe like what you think of like Project Sprinters, because the reason I sort of came about with that is because I identified when I was in that limbo stage of like figuring out I've got ADHD, is that I do so much better when I work on short projects. Because when I have longer projects, I feel that's when I start losing motivation, I get bored, problems start materializing. But because it's all new, fresh, and a challenge, I'll go in and do those problems for a company and I'll literally just obsess about it and I'll get the results. So I think, I'm in sort of the process of really just talking to people at the moment, like how they identify with the Project Sprinter kind of method. Everybody who's a Project Sprinter at the moment, we kind of describe ourselves as specialist generalists, because we can do a little bit of everything. I don't really like the term generalist, because I feel that means we're just a little bit okay about everything. Specialists, we don't stick at something long enough to be specialists. But when we do go down like really deeply into these holes, don't we, where we learn so much stuff about something. So I think that's why we're specialist generalists, but we get bored really quickly. How would you sort of relate to that sort of, like, obviously you've worked in a company for X amount of time. Do you feel like you thrive off like things where you have that variety and do things like really quickly, or is it a case of we're kind of like
the age-old adage of the jack of all trades is master of none, but always better than a master of one?
Yeah, I think in this startup sort of world, you kind of need people who can do a little bit of everything. You need people who can just like roll out sleeves and actually do a little bit of everything, get it done. And obviously when you grow as a business, you can bring in specialist people, can't you, for something to get. But I think
a conversation I've just had with Helen about community and Belbin's team roles. If you have a community around you, then you can allow space for specialisms. You can have people with their special interest, because you're working as a team to get there. When
everyone's bringing in their skills.
If you're going alone, then you need to be able to adapt to the challenges that you're facing, and you might not be a master of any of the things that you might benefit from being a master from, but you know enough. I know a little about a lot. I know enough to get me into trouble, but not enough to get me out of trouble.
That's a good way of looking at it as well. Yeah.
I've moved radiators. I've rehung doors. I
just think things like that, they're like so random and different, but also every new challenge those things and learning those skills. Like, obviously doing radiators, where it is, there's always something about it you can take from that process, because you probably had to go and Google something, you had to watch something, you had to go and buy new materials or whatever it is to do it. So I love the fact that it's not just what you did, like you're describing, it's the mentality. I think it's the attitude of actually someone who was prepared to do something completely random. They'll do the work and just to find and figure it out.
Well, I think that there's an angle there about lifelong learning.
Yeah.
So those people who are curious. Definitely. But then, talking about the ADHD tax, I've got 4 kids. So
are they your ADHD tax?
They might well be, but I can't afford to pay a carpenter £100 to rehang my door. Yeah. So I'm going to go. I'm going to go to B&Q, spend 15 quid on some chisels, and do it my bloody self, because I know how to undo screws.
Yeah.
And design and technology back in secondary school, I know how to use a chisel.
And do you think this stems as well? I don't know if you feel the same, but obviously we're impulsive, so we do things, we don't probably think too quickly about actually what resources, money, time, effort's needed. But also I think I'm quite naive. The fact that I will overestimate how much I can do in a short amount of time, or not really think about the consequences, the time, the resources, the stress, whatever. And then I'm quite impulsive, obviously, where you'll just go and do it. So I think that probably from an ADHD perspective bodes really well for trying new things and just doing it. Because also once you've started doing a process and you think, shit, actually, this takes a lot more work, I'm going to have to do a lot. But then because we're persistent and we don't want to give up, we'll find a way of doing it.
Well, so that's that rejection sensitivity.
Yeah,
is that I don't want to break. I don't want to fail.
Definitely.
I had a really interesting conversation with my first ever coach, who ended up doing some work with me in the organisation I was working with. And she was like, the difference between us, Richard, is that I'll say no to stuff because I've carefully considered my ability, and I've decided that I don't have the skills required. You'll say yes to stuff and you'll figure it out when you find out.
I think that's bloody amazing. I think that the fact that whole "we'll figure it out" is brilliant quality to have. But then if you have someone in, like you were saying about community, if you've got people around you, a company, whatever, who can then sort of jump in when you kind of like done too much or gone too far or haven't got the right skills. But it's that getting started, isn't it? Of actually saying, being curious, being brave, just going for it and trialing it. Because, a lot of us don't have clarity about what we want to do or what's possible. But we only get clarity from taking action. Yeah. So I think having that ability to where we can just go, you know what, I don't know what the answers are. I know there's a big problem here. I know I can solve it somehow. Let's just figure it out, because we're like non-linear thinking. And then just go for it. But then having that resources around you, support to be able to do it. I think the problem we fall into is when we have like these big challenges that maybe you sort of identified, where that RSD might kick in, or perfectionism and all these different things. That's what leads to burnout. I really do believe that. And I've been like that this last few months, where I've never done anything like training, courses, never built a community, never done all these things. In the last couple of months, I've just put all this together, and it's also managing all the different tech, all the different platforms, writing all the content, doing all that. Oh my God, if I actually thought about all that stuff that I was going to have to do before I did it, I probably wouldn't have done it. Yeah. But the problem is, because I stretched myself so much, I went over that 4%. They say that we should always have a 4% stretch. in what we're learning, because that's like the perfect amount where we're challenging ourselves
out of the comfort zone, but
Yeah.
not so far out that we're
you're challenging
ourselves.
yourself with a new skill, which is exciting. You feel like you're learning something new, but it's not too much outside your comfort zone, as you said. But when we end up doing too much, where we're like 10%, 15%, whatever, that's where I think we really suffer with the burnout, stress, RSD, because it becomes really overwhelming. So I think, yeah, our balance is like, yeah, we can jump in and do stuff, but we need to probably know roughly how much we're pushing ourselves like too far over, I think, because I don't think we estimate how big something is, because most people would research the buggery out of it, wouldn't they, for like 3 weeks, have a plan, all this, and we're just gone down the road, we're just gone and done it. So yeah, I think we need a bit of a stop button. So I think meds sometimes helps.
The brakes on.
More so than just doing more.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that's an awesome place to leave it.
It's been good to chat to you.
And yeah, we've had a good amount of time. We've meandered all over the place.
I know.
Yeah, this conversation's a little less structured than some of the others. But yeah,
I think that's why I'm good. Like, I'm not very good when there isn't always structure, but I think that's an ADHD thing, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing is
structure, but also it gives us room to move.
Yeah, I the reason I'm doing this podcast is to enable other people and me to hear the lived life experience of other people, to hear their challenges and see their workarounds. And I was talking to a couple of people who are medicated, love the fact they're medicated, can't absolutely hate the weeks when they're not, or days when they forget to take. And then I've got a couple of other conversations about treating neurodiversity without any medicine, or people like me that are still in the process of getting the tick box before you've been allowed to look at medication, because we don't want to spend hundreds of pounds a month ourselves on private medication. Because
I think it's good to look at all the non-medical benefits, because I think even if you do take meds, it benefits it alongside it. It works alongside it. And a lot of people vary, don't they? Where I don't think everybody needs to take meds. If you've done all the self-help, you've done all the mindfulness, you need to work on yourself first, don't you? And I think a lot of that can actually be enough for many people. So yeah, definitely it's a good option.
Awesome, Kim. Well, thanks very much for coming on, and we'll chat soon.
Definitely. Speak to you soon. Thanks, Richard.
No worries.
Take care.